Do you have a long life expectancy? Does that run in your family? If so, there's certain financial strategies that you want to consider. I'm going to share that and more coming up. My name is Mike Bernard. I'm the host of the Wise Money Show. I'm also one of the certified financial planners right here at Korhorn Financial Group. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and smash that thumbs up button. All right, so as we're working through the 5-factor retirement planning process with our clients, trying to figure out, are they on track to retire, or what trade-offs, what adjustments do they need to make to get on track to retire? We always talk about that first factor, which is age. Age at which you want to retire, and then age at potential death, right? So life expectancy, okay? And typically, as we are planning for clients, we want to assume that there's some longevity, that there's some lengthy, life expectancy that they have. Why? Because if we're just planning for the average, we're under preparing for half of our clients, which is not acceptable, okay? But typically, as we share that, we get one of 3 responses as we say, we're trying to make the money last until your early 90s. We'll get one of 3 answers. One is, okay, well, I guess that's, sounds appropriate. That one's rare. We often get, there's no way I'm going to live that long. There's no way I'm going to live that long, okay? And that's the subject for a different video. What if you think you don't have long life expectancy, okay? Don't have longevity. But then the third response, we get this one frequently, is, oh yeah, definitely, my parents each lived to be 100, or each lived in their late 90s, or I've got longevity in my family. If that's you, what financial planning strategies should you consider? There's very specific ones that if you have longevity or expecting a long life expectancy that you should take advantage of or consider. Let's get into it. The first one, I would encourage you to delay Social Security. Now, it's got to fit within your overall financial plan because you've got to create a bridge to Social Security. You've got to have the right withdrawal strategy, all of that. But if possible, I'd want you to delay Social Security. Why? Because if you've got longevity, the break even on delaying Social Security is somewhere out there in your early 80s or late 70s, depending on your situation. So I'd encourage you to delay Social Security. If you're married, I'd want at least one of you to delay Social Security all the way until age 70. If you have longevity, you're going to want to run the math, run the numbers with your CFP, make sure that this makes sense and holds water with all other parts of your financial plan. But if you've got longevity, if you're planning on long life expectancy, I'd encourage you, try to delay Social Security. Next, when it comes to Medicare, I've shared with you before, oversimplistically, you're going to make the biggest health insurance decision of your life at age 65, and guess what? It's permanent. There's very little ability for you to transfer back and forth, and that decision is to go with traditional Medicare, okay, which is parts A, B, D, and a supplement, okay, or go with Medicare Advantage, which is Medicare Part C. And I'm not going to get into all of it, but typically traditional Medicare, A, B, D, and a supplement, it's going to cost you a little bit more each month, but then as you have claims, there's not going to be as much out-of-pocket and lower deductibles. Versus a Medicare Part C, Medicare Advantage plan, it's going to be likely lower monthly premium, but then as you use the insurance, you're going to have co-pays, higher deductibles, that sort of stuff. Okay, if you have longevity, you believe you have longevity, you'll want to run the numbers, but Medicare Advantage, right? If you likely, hey, I'm going to probably, live until I'm 100, something like that, and I'm relatively healthy, blah, blah, blah. It might be doing that cost benefit analysis. It might be better for you to pay less premium on a monthly basis. And therefore, when you start getting nickeled and dimed where you're paying more out of pocket or deductibles, that's okay because you've benefited from lower premiums all along the way. A lot more to consider than just that. But if you have longevity, I'd consider going Medicare Advantage as opposed to traditional Medicare. Also, if you have longevity, I'd encourage you to do some Roth conversions. Roth conversions, preferably earlier in retirement, the better. If you believe you're going to have a long life, living out there into your 90s, maybe even 100, something like that, I would consider trying to get as much money into that Roth IRA as possible. Now, there's 2 ways to get money into a Roth IRA. You can contribute as long as you have earnings, paycheck money, Or you can convert, which means transfer money from your IRA to your Roth IRA. That's how you convert money to your Roth IRA. Now, you may not want to do all of that at once, because when you make that transfer from your IRA to your Roth, that Roth conversion, it's a taxable event. But if you're expecting, listen, I'm going to be, my life expectancy is 3 decades, it's 4 decades. I'd rather have all the growth from that IRA grow tax-free in a Roth. So I'd be working with your CFP and coming up with a Roth conversion strategy, and I'd consider doing that as early as possible. In that 5-factor retirement plan, you've got to figure out what your income strategy is. Okay, I already talked about Social Security, but the other thing, if you're going to have a long life expectancy, I'd make sure that you're using a low withdrawal rate from your overall investments. Now, if you say, well, I can't afford to live on a low withdrawal rate, well, then you've got to recalculate your plan. That's longevity might mean you've got to work an extra year or two or save a little bit more, because ideally your withdrawal rate from your IRA, from your investments, is on the lower edge of the band, because you need those dollars to last longer for you. Does that make sense? There's obviously you need a 5-factor retirement plan to see if you're on track to retire. But then some of the metrics that you test along with that to see, okay, can this work? Will this hold water? Is this the right plan? Am I on track? Is to look at, all right, well, here's how much you'd be withdrawing from your investments as a percentage, those withdrawals as a percentage of your total retirement portfolio. Is that below 4%? And typically I like it between 3 and 4%. But if you've got longevity, if you've got a long life expectancy, I'd want that on the lower end of that spectrum, closer to 3% or even lower than that, because you're going to be drawing off of these dollars for a long time. And along with that, if you've got long life expectancy, make sure that you've got a prudent investment strategy, because some of your investments should still be positioned for the long term, okay? I think we're decades beyond the idea of saving up as much as you can and then just living off the interest or living off the dividends. For most people, that's how everyone used to retire. Because interest rates are so awful, most people, that's not the strategy they're able to work. And so if that's you, you've got to make sure that you've got some dollars positioned for the long term, because that's when you're going to use the dollars. Kevin Korhorn often says, okay, when you reach retirement, you've stacked up all your accounts, your dollars to this, and then you're going to lay them down on the side and spend this money, this money, this money, this money. The money that you're not going to spend until you're out there in your 90s, way out here, that should still be long term. It should be invested for the long term. So make sure you've got the right investment strategy, as well as taking the right level of risk for your situation. And then finally, if you've got longevity, make sure you've got a plan for long-term care needs, okay? Make sure you've got a plan. So often right now, people look at that risk. Number one, you've got to make a decision on whether you buy long-term care insurance or not. You've got to make that decision in your 50s, well before you actually are going to need care. And the costs have been rising. The premiums have been rising. And what's that led to? Many people are saying, yeah, I'm not doing that. I'll just live with the risk. Well, if you've got longevity, then the odds are in your favor that or against you, depending on how you want to look at it, that you're going to need some assistance later on in life. I mean, honestly, guys, the odds are already pretty staggering that that's going to be necessary for each of us. So I'm concerned about this trend with fewer people getting long-term care protection, long-term care insurance. If you've got longevity, it's even more important that you either get the protection or you've got another plan in place to cover or to manage the risk of you needing assistance and care later on in life. All right, so that's a lot. That's a lot to consider if you believe you've got longevity, or if that's in your heritage that people tend to live long in your family. But that's not an exhaustive list, and each of those you've got to look and compare with how it interacts, how it fits within all 6 areas of your financial life. Work with your CFP on that. This is precisely what they do. Should have a full meeting or multiple meetings devoted to this planning for longevity, okay? So work with your CFP on that. If you don't have a CFP on your team, you can always contact one on my team. Find us online, Korhorn.com, that's Korhorn with a K, wisemoneyshow.com, you can find us there as well, or give us a call, 574-247-5898. All right, there you have it. Go out and take your next wise step in your financial life.